Hi guys, good morning and welcome to this live session. I hope you guys are doing really well, staying off COVID. And if you have, if you have had COVID, it's okay. I hope you guys are doing better now and you are ready to start your career in the field of DevOps, right? My name is Ram. I'm from Great Learning and I want to tell you guys about all about DevOps interview questions, right? So before we do begin this session, I want a few things from you guys. Those few things are basically, telling me if you guys can see my face properly, if you guys can hear my voice properly, and if you guys can see my presentation that I'm showing you guys. So if these three things are fine, we can go ahead and proceed with the session, right? And if there are any disturbances in the background, do let me know. I'll try to, turn them off or try to minimize them, right? So till you guys do that, I'm going to show you something amazing. So here at Great Learning, we started something called Great Learning Academy. Now, for a lot of you guys who have been watching our live sessions regularly, already know about this, and a lot of you are, you have been using this as we have noticed, right? But for all the newcomers, I want to show you guys what Great Learning Academy is. So it's basically a place where you guys can, start your career, right? I'm not gonna sell this to you as a platform where you can buy stuff and everything, because it's not that. It's a place where you start your career, right? If you're a fresher or if you're a person who's looking to change their jobs, then this is something that you should definitely check out. Because once you come to Great Learning Academy, you have an option to select a career path. Once you select the career path, right, you get a choice of different careers. Man. Yeah. So over here, you guys can see that we have different career paths for you. As a data scientist, one of the popular careers is AI engineer, software developer, digital marketer. And each of these career paths have a lot of different types of courses that will help you reach that level, right? So let's say you want to become a data scientist and you go ahead and click on data scientist tab over here. And once you do, you get to know about what it is about becoming a data scientist, right? Like the responsibilities, the duties, and what are the different programs you'll need to use to become a data scientist. And you can go ahead and read through all of these things. But I feel the core part of this is basically, going ahead and checking out all the free courses we are providing. Again, guys, you don't have to pay anything for this. Just something we have come up with to help people out because of how COVID has affected everyone. So it's a free initiative, right? It's for everyone, even people who don't have the money, right? So I definitely recommend checking this out. It will really help you out. So let's say that you're choosing data scientist career, and these are the different courses that you'll have. Data science foundations, Python fundamentals of beginners, Python for machine learning, data visualization using Python, probability. So you guys can see that there is a lot of different courses, right? And you guys can go ahead and use these courses to enhance your skill set, right? And don't worry, even if we have so many courses over here, you don't have to go through everything. It's a slow process, right? Making a career is not something you do in like a blink. It's something that takes time. So put in the effort and you will get to the heights you want to go to. Okay, so this was about Great Learning Academy. You guys can go to and visit the website, that is greatlearning.in/academy, or if you want, go ahead and download the app. You can do it from there also. Okay, so now that we are done with that, let me come back and let me check the chat, right? So let's see what you guys have to say. Da-da-da. Let me open up the chat. Right. All right, so let's see. Okay, so we have Chandan Tiwari saying, hello sir, मैंने BCA distance से किया हुआ है और मुझे IT industry में आना है and don't have any technical knowledge of coding. Please help me which course is best for me. So Chandan, what I would say is, starting off with one of those type of careers. So if you come back to, Great Learning Academy, you can go ahead and choose a path in, as a cloud computing architect, or let's go back over here and let me show you. I think a best course would be for you is to, do the full stack kind of a course and get a certification as a full stack engineer, because that's definitely really going to help you out. And if not, right, you can always go ahead and get a DevOps certificate. But I would recommend getting the knowledge first from free resources and then utilizing any of the paid resources that you have. So let's say you want to get into, cloud computing, then you have an option to choose here what kind of cloud career do you want. And if not, you can scroll down and just go to whatever IT and software and choose whatever kind of course you want over here. Like let's say you want to check out data structures and algorithms, you can check it out over here. You can check out cybersecurity, Python fundamentals, whatever you're interested in, right? Okay, so one second, guys. Right. Now, I did not get a feedback from you guys. I just need to know if you guys can hear me and see me and, see everything else also properly, because otherwise I cannot proceed because then there's no point in it. Okay. And remember, guys, this is a place for you to just ask me questions. This is going to be a session where I just tell you guys about DevOps interview questions. So it need not be just me speaking to you. It can be you guys asking me questions and me answering it. And don't worry, even if it's a very stupid answer, I will try to answer it, okay? Because that's my goal over here. That is to help you guys. And let's not even call these answers stupid. Let's call them, genuine questions where people want to know more stuff, right? So feel free to leave those questions in the chat. And periodically, I will go through those questions and just try to answer them, okay? But I do want a confirmation, and I don't see any confirmation of a yes or no. So I'm going to wait till that happens, and then we can proceed. Hey, so we have Kashyap saying, hi Kashyap, good to see you. Your Academy website interface and development was awesome. Keep going, GL. Thanks a lot. Yeah, we worked really hard on it, and we really like that you guys like it. So we have Sunny Verma over here. We have Vikram Rathore, and we have Raj Vlogs and Chandan Tiwari. So these are all the people. All right, so we have Nenika, one of our regular viewers, saying that audio is clear, video is clear, and the PPT is visible. All right, so that's great. Now let us proceed with this session. So guys, how many of you know about DevOps? Like, what is your goal over here? Do you want to learn more about DevOps, or are you interested in knowing the actual interview questions? Please let me know in the chat and I will help you out accordingly, okay? But anyways, let me begin off by telling you guys the first kind of question that might appear to you. Now, let me give you a disclaimer over here. Getting a DevOps job is not always the easiest of things, right? You have to work for it. You have to study for it. You have to know all the different skill sets that you need. You need to have a lot of different tool knowledge that is, popular in the industry. You need to have a lot of good fundamentals, and you need to have at least a little bit of experience. Now, that is a different topic altogether, where I talk about how you guys can go ahead and get a job, and this is about interview questions. But let me give you guys a glimpse about how to get a DevOps job. You basically learn all the things about DevOps, then you practice it in different projects, and then you try to, basically do volunteer projects or peer projects where, you take help from friends and do something great together. And that's how you get experience handling errors and making sure everything is being delivered, because that's a DevOps engineer's role. He is basically trying to make sure that software is being delivered as efficiently as possible. And, it's very polished and high quality, right? So that's what a DevOps engineer does. He's basically a developer as well as operations kind of guy. So how do you get a job? You basically try to do all the projects. Then you try to look for junior and associate level jobs, which don't pay a lot, but they give you a lot of experience, right? Those kind of jobs give you a lot of experience. And once you get that experience, you can apply for the heavier jobs where you have to lead and you have to you're responsible for a lot of different things. And other career paths include, going from developer or a tester to DevOps engineer. Okay. So when you start, applying for jobs, you'll see a lot of different questions coming to you. And one of the questions that they will ask you first is, just to sort things out, is they will ask you, can you explain to us what DevOps is? So they will try to basically get an answer from you and understand what you think about DevOps. Because with DevOps, the thing is that, it's a little of a fickle answer that different people can give different answers, right? But there is a standard set of definition. Let me tell you that definition. DevOps is the set of practices that combine software development, that is the dev part, and the IT operation that forms the ops part, right? It aims to shorten the system's development lifecycle and provides continuous delivery with high software quality. And DevOps is complementary with Agile software development. Several DevOps aspects come from Agile methodology. So from this, I think you guys understand what DevOps is. If not, let me just tell you guys in simpler words. DevOps is a methodology. It's a methodology that you use for software development, right? You have different kinds of methodology. You have waterfall methodology, agile methodology, and then you have DevOps methodology. So DevOps methodology, what it does is it basically takes the development part from the dev and takes the operations part from the IT operations team, and it kind of mixes the roles together. So a DevOps engineer's day-to-day role basically would be to make sure that the infrastructure on which your software is being developed is managed well and it's performing well. And his another job is to basically create automation scripts to make sure everything is automated here and there, and that the delivery of software is happening on time without any issues, and that the software that is being delivered is of the higher quality. And again, one more thing about DevOps is that there's a certain mindset that you have to follow. It's called a user-centered mindset that you have to follow, where you have to make sure that whatever decision you're making, you have to think in such a way that if I make this decision, will it help the users or the end users in the end, right? So that is the question you have to ask. And there's a lot of other values of, different sets of values and principles that you have to keep in mind when making decisions that form a part of DevOps. And some people even call DevOps as a philosophy or as a culture of working, right? So there's a lot of different answers to DevOps, but if you get an amalgam of all of these things in your mind properly, that it's a methodology, it's a philosophy, it's a working culture, and then when you can explain it to the employer in such a well-structured manner, then they'll be happy about it. Okay, so the name DevOps basically comes from the developers dev and the operations ops, right? So I hope you guys that is clear with you. Now, another question can be, how do Agile and DevOps differ, right? So what are the differences between Agile and what is the difference between DevOps? So the thing is, the Agile methodology is another methodology, right? So the whole idea of Agile is to make sure that teams can work faster, more efficiently in regular sprints to keep on improving based on feedback. So it's like a loop kind of thing, right? You start off with a certain piece of code, you start working on it, and you don't work on a big piece of code, you work on a short piece of code or a small piece of code. Then once you make that piece of code, then you go ahead and send it for deployment, then you get tested, then you get testing feedback where people just look at it and give you feedback, and based on that feedback you basically improve upon the next cycle where you basically update the software, or if you start working on another piece of software, then you include the changes that you got in the feedback over there, right? So Agile is basically that. It's basically making software in shorter cycles, maybe 1 or 2 weeks, and making sure that you take the feedback that you get very seriously, right? Early Agile was used only by developing teams. It hadn't really trickled down to the other parts of whole software development, like testing and operations, right? So while successful at improving the development speed itself, like we were using Agile in development teams, software developers were using it, but other teams were not using it, right? So it was not really affecting the down part of the software development, where you do the other parts, like you deliver the software, right? Not just make the software and test the software. And that's why it was lacking over there. So that's where we came up with DevOps, right? With the need to improve the testing and operation, it was basically realized by a lot of different companies that they need to start automating the process. And that's where the concept of continuous integration emerged, where you're taking a lot of different parts of software delivery and development, and you're putting it together and controlling it from one place, right? And you're automating a lot of different aspects of it. So a lot of different companies, big and small, basically took up this initiative and improved upon the delivery part. That was, they started implementing continuous integration, and that kind of snowballed and became something called DevOps, right? And generally, when we talk about DevOps, right, DevOps is something that is used in unison with Agile. You would have teams working in the Agile methodology, but delivering with the DevOps mindset, right? So DevOps and Agile is something that are basically used together. Okay, so if somebody asks you what it is, then this is what you tell them. All right. So another question might be, why DevOps, right? So why do we need to implement DevOps at all? So DevOps has a lot of different benefits. Let's discuss them. So to understand why we do DevOps, we have to see what was wrong with the previous old model. So let's take an example of waterfall model, right? So waterfall model is a very old model. That's not to say it's a bad model. It's just that it's not very adaptive to our current market, right? Why is it so? Because waterfall model has a certain set of phases. It has the requirements phase, it has the designing phase, it has the implementation phase, testing, deployment, and maintenance phase. Now, in early software development, when it was just coming up, waterfall model was just fine to be used, right? It did not have any problems. It was a long development life cycle. and there wasn't really a need for developing software very fast, and because the consumer market wasn't really big for software back then. So waterfall model was totally okay, right? And it was a standard model that was used in different fields also. So it was really useful back then, but then in recent times, when you have to develop and deliver software so fast every month, that's not that's not a thing that waterfall model can do. So it kind of lacked, right? And it had a lot of drawbacks. It has very long development life cycles. It was very difficult to backtrack if you made any mistakes, or if you wanted to change something. You wouldn't have a finished product till the end. So if it was a 6 months development life cycle, you couldn't show anything to the stakeholders until the end of 6 months, right? So it's a very long process, and you have to plan for that long process. So it's easier to plan for 1 week than 6 months, right? Lesser number of variables, and it is a higher risk also, because you're not seeing the product till the end, so you don't know what kind of thing you'll be getting, right? You might get a bad product also. So these are the different drawbacks, and we had a lot of different other methodologies coming in and resolving these drawbacks, like extreme programming, agile, lean, and all of those things, right? And DevOps is part of that, right? DevOps is one of the newer methodologies that helps us to deliver software in quick succession. And while in quick succession, it is able to deliver a very well polished software. And because the software is very well polished, we have very satisfied customers who are getting their software quickly and in a good quality manner, right? So they don't have any complaints. And since they don't have any complaints, they invest more in a company. If they're stakeholders or if they're customers, they spread it through word of mouth, and more and more people get into it, and they start buying your product. So you see a rise in revenue. And when you see a rise in revenue, that's when you see you are becoming more successful, right? So that is one thing. And technically speaking, DevOps is able to deliver software really fast. It helps in scaling. So if you want to expand your business, then DevOps really helps you in that, because that kind of methodology is very suitable for scaling your operations, right? And that's why DevOps is amazing, and that's why a lot of companies have started to use it compared to the older methodologies. Okay. All right. Now, before I do talk about this particular question, I want to see what you guys have to say in the chat. If you guys don't have anything to say in the chat, I'm just going to proceed. Okay. All right. So I don't see any questions. Guys, don't be afraid to ask any questions. Okay. If you think that this is boring and you want to talk about something else, but it has to be a DevOps, then feel free to do so. Okay. Because this is me trying to help you guys out, right? So whatever you guys want to talk about, I want to talk about that too. Okay. But then again, this is an important topic. I'm sure you guys won't mind. All right, so I will go ahead and proceed for now. Let me just refresh the chat. All right, cool. So another question can be, what kind of advantages will you see on implementing DevOps in software development? So again, this comes to the benefits that we were talking about before, right? So the benefits of DevOps are basically higher productivity. You're able to automate a lot of different things, so there's no bottlenecking, and you are able to deliver a lot more than you could before. And you're producing an amazing software, so that gives people the idea that you're making excellent software, right? And it gives you a lot of return of investment. If you're giving a lot of investment for implementing DevOps, you will definitely see a lot of return of that particular investment, as higher revenue, as higher profit. There's higher speed and there's rapid delivery of the software. There's a good amount of security. DevOps really concentrates on the security aspect also. There's a specific field called DevSecOps that talks about DevOps security aspects, right? And again, as I told you guys, better scaling. Okay. So how do we implement DevOps within a project? So this is something our employer would ask you, and you need to know how to answer this properly, right? So let me show you, right? So there are a few steps that you need to follow when you're implementing DevOps within a project. And this is not a strict guidelines. This is something just for you guys to keep in mind. You can give this with an example. You can talk about how this specific software that needs to be delivered, and you've been tasked to, implement DevOps within it. And the employees themselves might even give you an example and ask you to basically work with that, right? And that's when you start talking about how you would do it, right? So for me, this is how I break it down. Step one, understand the current existing software development process, because we want to know what already exists. What is the thing that is being followed right now? Once we understand what kind of software is being developed and what kind of resources we have at hand, right? And we identify the places where improvement can be made and we can become more efficient, right? That's basically gathering a lot of knowledge. You are learning about the company, you are getting to know where the improvements have to be made, right? Then you come to step two. Once you've understood all of the requirements, you create a plan. This plan is for basically preparing an environment. Right. So this plan, right, you are creating a plan to basically implement a better, more robust software development infrastructure, so that people in the newer life cycle, when they develop software, then it's being implemented with DevOps, right? So here what we do is you basically create a plan and we prepare an environment for that plan to be executed, but we don't directly execute it, right? A good pipeline must be established on a strong infrastructure. So we need to keep in mind all of that. We need to know what the budget constraints are. We need to know how many resources that we can implement as of now and how many we may require in future. And that's the thing in step two. So step two is kind of planning. Step one is identifying. Step two is planning. And step three is basically doing baby steps. Some of the glaring problems with already existing pipeline already, right? But don't try to disturb the entire environment like directly, right? Because if you want to implement a new system, you need to have a proof of concept of that system, right? Because you can't just implement it. What if there are a lot of issues? What if it starts crashing? And that will affect the business overall. So we can't just do it like that, right? So we instead try to implement it on a smaller scale and test the waters, basically see if it's working well or not. And we do it on test servers. We basically test it out. And once we think that it's going to be doing well, right, then that's when we move forward, right? So maybe we first implement changes to one part of the development, right? We change it one by one, or we basically test it out somewhere else and then we implement it. So that's step three. And step four is basically completely establishing the new infrastructure and testing the new pipeline into place. So that is again something I talked about. Once that is completed, development can start and the software deployment can also start using the new pipeline. Then we come to this fifth step, that is start implementing an agile lean culture within different teams. So we're kind of done with the technical part with step four itself, but with step five, we have to implement the philosophical and the cultural aspects of DevOps, right? Make sure that the boundaries are set between different teams that don't cause any miscommunications. People shouldn't be working in silos. That is a big important part of DevOps. And insightful comments should be shared without having any company politics involved in this, because it's a user-centered approach, right? We want to make sure that the users getting the thing they want. All the teams should be looking at deployment as a part of their goal, right? So everyone should know that their job is not just to develop or just to test. Their goal is to basically deliver the best software. And when everyone has that mindset, only then can we proceed. So it's kind of a leadership role also, DevOps, where you have to implement these ideas as well as talk about the culture and implement the culture in the working environment also. Step six is about understanding the feedback from the team as well as customers and implementing the changes based on them. So we have set up a good infrastructure pipeline, right? Now we've delivered a software, maybe in one cycle, we have delivered a software, and I give you specific scenarios where they ask you, how would you resolve this problem? So this is something you keep in your mind when you are talking about solving that problem, okay? Okay, so what are the main phases implemented in DevOps? So they might ask you, what are the different phases implemented in DevOps? So you have different phases like continuous development, continuous testing, continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous monitoring. So these are different phases that are, implement DevOps. You can even go ahead and further explain those phases, but I don't think they would ask that of you, unless they do. What are the different tools that are implemented within DevOps? So there are a lot of different tools, and they might ask you specific using within software development itself, where developers are writing software, right? So if you improve the static testing over there, where we are checking for better errors and better bugs and resolving code smells, That way, and checking for security vulnerabilities. If somebody is putting software code, username and password in text, check those things out, then we can easily resolve that issue in the start before it becomes a big problem. So this is how you can answer them. These are the type of questions they might ask. In continuous testing, have SonarQube, Selenium, PyTest, Catalan. Selenium is a dynamic testing tool, and SonarQube is one of the static testing tool that we talked about. It helps you discover the security vulnerabilities in your code in the start itself, or it helps you discover things like code smells and bugs and etc. Then you have continuous integration, which is one of the most important parts of DevOps. So you have things like Jenkins. They might ask you Splunk or ELK. Splunk also does logging, but Splunk is a very expensive tool, whereas ELK is a lot more cheaper to use, right? So those kind of things. And in scripting, you need to know Python, PowerShell, Perl, and Java. So they might ask you what kind of automation script would you be writing for a specific purpose, and you can answer in a specific script if you know multiple scripts to answer them within, right? And they'll ask you questions like, is continuous delivery same as continuous deployment? Right. This is a very there's a very simple difference between these two. In continuous delivery, the software is not automatically sent to the production server, right? So beyond that, it actually requires human involvement for final deployment to the client and customer in the production environment. So in continuous delivery, you're not just like directly pushing; it's not completely automated. Whereas in continuous deployment, right, it is automatically sent to the production environment if all the test cases pass and if the test coverage is 100%. There's no human involvement over there, right? It can only stop if the test case fails. Like if there's a test case that fails, then it will send out an alert to whoever is responsible. That's when the human involvement will come in. So that's the difference between continuous delivery and deployment. Continuous delivery is something that is not completely automated; it has human involvement before it goes to the production environment, whereas deployment is completely continuous. Okay, so they might ask you things like, what is containerization in DevOps, right? So what is containerization? Containerization is basically introducing containers. Now, containers basically help you avoid bottlenecks and help you implement microservices style of architecture. So you can understand this in detail by checking out my Docker video where I explain these. One second, guys. So containers, again, coming back, guys. Yeah. So containers basically help you create an isolated environment where you can develop and test code, right? So it makes it easy for that, and it helps you implement a microservices type of architecture. Now, if they ask you how is cloud integrated in software development, then you can go ahead and tell them like, all the different cloud providers like AWS, Azure provide a lot of different services that we use. Let's say we're using compute services or storage services or networking services or whatever, right? Whatever it may be, infrastructure or platform or any software, right? So they provide all of these different things and we don't have to pay for them. And we can go ahead and implement them and integrate them wherever required. So, right? It is basically the whole development infrastructure can be on cloud. Your database can be on cloud. Your storage can be on cloud. Your source code repository can be on cloud. Your servers and your security firewalls, everything can be on cloud. You can basically work completely from cloud without having a single on-premise hardware. Why do we need to continuously test? So when we are implementing a whole system that will be able to run without any human intervention, it is obviously important to make sure that we run test scripts that run on software to make sure of its acceptability are also automated, right? So we need to make sure everything is automated, and that's why we continuously test, so that we don't have to involve a human in this, because if you want to run these test scripts continuously for a lot of different software, then a human can't do it by himself, right? Automation scripts really help in resolving that matter of fact where they just run by themselves. Now, the software should be tested continuously because DevOps in mind, we try to make sure that software we are developing is of the highest quality. So we test it rigorously and we test it continuously to make sure whatever we're producing has no bugs, no glitches, no crashes in future, no code smells, no security vulnerability. Basically, we try to reduce any kind of technical debt that we can have. Okay, so before I talk about this question, let me see if you guys have any questions. All right, so there are a few questions now. Bala is asking, what is the best way to take a look on programming? Okay, so this is in 15 minutes back. What is the best way to take a look on programming in finest way? So I'm assuming you're talking about how to start coding. I would say just go simple fundamentals of programming, and Python is one of the easiest languages to start with. If this is not the answer you're looking for, just explain your question a little better. Integrity is one of the benefits. Yes, Kashyap, you're right. Jyoti Tanwar is asking which programming language is used in DevOps. So you have a different set of languages. In DevOps, you're not stuck to one language per se, right? You can change it based on your requirements. You can use Go, you can use Java, you can use Perl, and it really depends on your situation and what kind of tools you're using, what kind of tools those languages, what kind of languages those tools use, or maybe a personal preference or maybe a company's preference. So it really depends. You are never stuck to one language. But if you had to have a jack of all trades language for you to know as a DevOps engineer, then I would recommend Python and Bash scripting, shell scripting. Yeah, so Kashyap is right. Kashyap is also saying Python can be used. Kashyap is saying independent to the device environment is Docker's independent devices environment is Docker service. Yeah, so he's right. So basically, he's talking about an isolated environment. Okay, cool. So guys, go ahead and give me more questions in the chat so that I can answer those. Okay, and there are a lot of questions. I might not do all of the DevOps questions. I'm just giving you guys a few ideas here and there, right? So they'll ask you, what can you tell us about the various components used in Selenium? Then you guys can go ahead and tell them about Selenium IDE, Selenium RC, WebDriver, and Selenium Grid. These are the 4 components, which is the most used one. You talk about that, and you basically tell them how it works out. Okay. So what role does a VCS play in software development? So they might ask you, what does a version control system do? So version control systems are basically GitHub and Mercurial and those kind of things. They basically store and organize your code, right? So the reason we need a version control system is so that we can basically so that we can store and organize our code. So let's say that you want to start programming. One second. Sorry. Yeah, so version control system basically allow us to version our software. So let's say that you have a software that has 3 versions of it, and third version is the latest version, right? So you have a history of all the different things and changes you've made, which makes it really good for investigation if any future errors occur and all that, right? And it allows you to store it in a very well manner where you're organizing everything and you can access anything you want very fast, and gives a lot of different other features also, like security, total control, and fast delivery of software. And that's why we make use of a version control system. When you strictly speak of role VCS plays, it basically helps you automate the whole process, right? So the purpose of version control system is basically to control different versions of the code, and it meshes really well with DevOps ideology because it allows us for quick delivery of code and automatic job triggering. So again, the automation part of this is big, where you want to automate certain things, right? So let's say that a developer uploads the code onto a version control system. Now, how does it go to the pipeline? Does that same developer take that code and put it on a pipeline where it can go ahead and get tested, build, and whatever? No. What we do is we basically create a script, or we assign triggers in our integration software where it detects a change has been made, and based on that, it basically executes new stuff, right? It basically creates, basically checks if there is a new code coming in, and if there is a new code, it takes that code and it sends it down the pipeline. So this is how it works. Okay, so let's talk about this question. Explain Git rebase. So they might ask you specific tool-based questions also. So they might ask you, what is Git rebase? So Git rebase is basically a type of merging in Git. So in Git, we have different branches like master and different other branches. So this particular command allows a user to shift a set of commands and give them a new base. So basically what you're doing is, so let's say you have a master branch and you have certain commits you made in this master branch, and you create a second feature branch. So this feature branch will have a certain feature that another developer is working on. So he creates this feature branch, and on this feature branch, he creates 2 new commits. these can be the changes he's made over time, right? And now he wants to merge it back to the master. So he does so by using the rebase command. So once he uses the rebase command, what Git basically does is it goes through all of the commits and it takes them, it copies them, and it puts them on the master branch. So these two commits basically get transferred onto our master branch, right? So the difference between git merge and git rebase is that, you know, the history of the commits of the branch is carried over. So if you want to make sure that all of the different things that you did in your feature branch are verbatim copied onto your master branch, then this is what you can do. And there are other reasons also why people use rebase, because they use rebase to avoid a lot of merge commits. Sometimes merge commits can be very annoying, so a lot of people use git rebase instead of it. Okay, so that was git rebasing. Another question can be explaining Jenkins architecture. So Jenkins architecture, right? One second, guys. Talking continuously for so long really takes your breath out. Okay, so I'll just take a small break and answer a question that Ankur has. So could you explain the blue-green deployment and canary deployment? Just one second. Right. Let me just tell you. Okay, so this is a very good question. I actually had to refresh my memory about these things. Okay, so Ankur is asking about blue-green deployment and canary deployment. So it's a type of deployment. In blue-green deployment, what you do is basically you have different sets of servers. So let's say you have one blue server and one green server, and these are production environment servers. And in these production environment servers, right, you basically deploy your final prod, code software, and you keep them as a backup basically for each other. So let's say you've pushed the blue server onto the customers. The customers start using it, right? And let's say something goes wrong, then you come up with the green server, right? So you direct all the traffic coming in to the green server. So it's kind of like a backup, right? And then you have canary deployment. Now, canary deployment is kind of testing things out. So you use it for testing purpose, where what you do is you have a subset of different servers. Let's call them canary servers, and you have your normal production servers, right? So what you do before going to your final production servers, you deploy your software onto your canary servers and you test it out. You test it rigorously. You basically do load testing, you do capacity testing, and you check if it's going to crash or not, right? You make sure that you made the software very robust. So you do it on the canary servers, and once you're very sure about what you've done so far, you can go ahead and deploy it in the final production environment. Okay, so this is the blue-green deployment and canary deployment. So I hope that was really clear for you, Ankur. And thank you for asking a question. It's good to see people asking questions that are beyond our scope of what we are doing, as in not just the questions I'm telling you guys about. Okay, so Jenkins architecture, for those of you who don't know what a Jenkins architecture is, basically you have a master slave architecture where you have one master agent and you have multiple slave agents, right, or nodes. So the master is the one that basically takes in all the requests from whoever is giving the requests or whatever configurations there are, and he divides the load based on idleness or whatever setting you've made. Okay, so this is your Jenkins architecture. Okay, so what are the different DevOps KPIs? So key performance index, right? So you have recovery rate, speed of deployment, and failed deployments. So recovery rate is basically how fast you recover from failed deployment. That is basically reducing the downtime of an application. Speed of deployment, how fast you're able to deliver, and if you're able to deliver it on time or not. And failed deployments, the lesser number of failed deployments you have, the better it is for you as a DevOps engineer. Okay, so remove a Git commit. So this is a very simple thing. If you want to remove a Git commit, you use the revert command. Okay. All right. So I explain Docker ecosystem. Just talk about all the different environment objects there are: Docker engine, Docker objects, Docker registry, Docker compose, and Docker swarm. Okay, can you draw a basic CI/CD pipeline? Yep, you show them a very simple one. If they ask you to do a specific kind of deployment or a specific kind of tool to be used, then you just draw it on rough paper and show it to them. If you're doing it online, you can use Paint for this and just show them there's a software developer who writes a code, who pushes it to the source code manager or a version control system. From there goes to a CI/CD tool like Jenkins. In the CI/CD tool, there is a pipeline that is set up, and in that pipeline, you're basically defining what happens to the code that comes in. So it goes to the build, it goes to building, where you're taking the code and you are making it into a software. And once you've created your software, you go to testing, where you test the software out dynamically. And once you test it out dynamically, it goes to the staging area. So it stays in the staging area for whatever purpose, documentation, or to be reviewed again and again, or to do one of the testings like you do to, testing servers. So like different kind of testing. And once it comes to staging environment, it can go ahead and it becomes a release candidate, and from there it can go ahead to the production. That is your final delivery of it. Okay, and if there are any issues over here, the feedback is given to whoever is necessary. So if there is some issue in the testing that the code does not perform well or does not match up to the requirements, then a developer is informed, or whoever the team lead is informed, and the cycle repeats. So this is a very simple CI/CD pipeline. So what is the role of a configuration management tool in DevOps? So configuration management is the process of maintaining computer servers and software in a desired consistent state. So basically, imagine you want to configure multiple thousands of systems, right? And how do you do it? Do you personally go and make those changes in those systems? No, you use a configuration management tool, right? You have different kinds of tools like Salt Stack, Chef, and the rest, and Puppet, and you use them to basically make the changes specifically, right? So they really help you out. So what are the some configuration management tools? Puppet, SaltStack, Chef, and Ansible. So the name itself tells you what it does. Configuration management. So you have a lot of different environmental settings that you want to set in certain areas. So let's say you want to set up your infrastructure on 100 servers. You don't want to do it tediously manually by going and doing it yourself, and that takes a lot of time. So you make use of configuration management tools that do this thing for you, where you use Puppet for this particular purpose, right? Or Ansible or SaltStack or Chef. All right, guys. So that was it for today's session. All the bunch of questions I wanted to tell you guys about. Now, if you guys have any interesting questions yourself that you want me to answer, please leave them in the chat. And if you guys don't have anything, then we can go ahead and end the session. If you have any question at all, please do ask. Okay. So I was really happy Ankur asked us this question. Ankur asked about blue-green deployment and canary deployment. Yeah. So let me just open up my chat again. One second, guys. My phone is acting a bit weird. Okay, so chat is open up. Okay, so what is Ankur saying? Yes, sir, thanks. Kashyap is saying yes, sir. Okay, you guys are replying to the thing I was talking about. And Ankur is saying one more question. Okay, good. What is branch strategies? Okay. So I assume you're okay, branch strategies. I think you're talking about version control system branch strategies where you have different branches, master feature branch, develop branch, hotfix branch, and all that. So branch strategies is basically you trying to develop the best workflow, version control system workflow that suits you the best, right? So let's say you use a standard workflow where you have one master branch, you have one develop branch, you have multiple feature branches, you have one release branch, and you have the hotfix branch to fix things, right? So it really depends on scenario to scenario. You can have multiple parallel branches that help you to uh, so what I'm trying to say is that in version control system you have multiple branches so that you can do an effective teamwork together and make the software and push it out to the master branch, right? From where it goes to wherever it has to go, like maybe Jenkins or whatever integration testing tool, right? So to create that specific branch, right, you need to understand how your team works and you need to make a more efficient way for them to work, and you implement different kinds of branch strategies. So let me just tell you guys about the different strategies there are. So again, feature branching or trunk based development. So these are the two ones that I see over here, but there are a lot more. And basically the whole point in branch strategy is to make sure that it is easy for your developers to make those changes if there are any changes and integrate those changes together, right? So it's basically allows for a better cohesion of the whole team and work together. I hope that answered your question. Okay, so we have Subhansh asking for, sir, I want computer network related courses. So, Subhash, this is what you can do. You can go ahead and check out Great Learning Academy and, just type in network over here and see what course comes up. So, let's say, yep. So right now, there's ethical hacking, mobile platforms, and network architecture. But I assume what you want is specifically network based, right? So right now, I think what you should do is go ahead and check out all the free resources there are for you online, and do one of the courses that you find, right? Or what you can do is go ahead and subscribe and wait for a course that we release for in future. Yeah, you can always download the app. You always get notifications for any new courses we'll be making. Okay. Any more questions, guys? Someone saying that they can't hear me. I think it may be an issue from your side because everyone else is able to hear me. Yeah. Okay, guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the session, but I want to tell you a few things. Again, check out Great Learning Academy. We have different kind of career paths that you guys can choose. Again, I feel like Ankur has a lot of interest in going to the DevOps or cloud field, which are kind of intermixed. So go ahead and check out cloud engineer or cloud DevOps engineer or cloud architect, whatever you feel like is your thing. Yeah. Go ahead and tell us what you liked in the chat, in the comment section. And if you guys want more interview questions, leave a comment in the chat. And please like this session because it always helps, it always helps fight the YouTube algorithm and reach out to more and more people who might be interested in watching this kind of stuff, right? It's always good to share knowledge. So thank you so much for watching, guys. My name is Ram, and I'll see you guys in the next session.